graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves, take it to the top one time non-stop.
Hello and welcome to PhD Hard Talk. Thank you so much for wanting to have a discussion with me and to share your knowledge with the world. Could you please introduce yourself, what you're doing for your PhD, and then we can crack on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor. My name is AJ Bravo. I'm a researcher based in the University of Kent here in, the lovely Garden of England. And my research is about pornography and censorship. And it's particularly trying to highlight positive aspects of pornography, how pornography helps people pay their bills, how it helps queer people find a way of expressing themselves and find a way of finding community, and how censorship affects both artists and sex workers alike.
That is quite interesting, and I'm excited to dive into that. But I think in terms of first things first, let's discuss neurodiversity. What is neurodiversity to you, and what does it mean?
Well, I mean, I have PTSD, and I'm about to get my ADHD diagnosis. Fingers crossed. So neurodiversity, I guess being neurodivergent is a little bit like being queer in that it's very normal to you, but apparently very weird for everyone else.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to find your community, right? So I think it's all about how neurodivergent people function in a way that's different to what capitalism and society deem acceptable. And, particularly here in the West, whether it's deemed quirky, which is sort of like socially acceptable behavior that's kind of cute, or whether you're deemed to be, a total freak and no one wants to talk to you and all this kinds of stuff. So yeah, for me, neurodiversity is pretty much like being queer. It's just those little things that you do, the way that you are, which is very different to what's socially acceptable.
So in terms of that, not funny, I would say funny enough, but I'm not meaning funny enough. I've had some of the guests who've been on PhD Hard Talk come back to me and say, I always thought I was different. Guess what? I've just found out. I've just been diagnosed with ADHD, and I'm not sure how my partner will feel about it, but it's answered a lot of questions why I want things to be done a certain way and why I behave a certain way. And I've never fitted in with my family. And it's been a big challenge. And based on your understanding of neurodiversity, what advice do you have for somebody that's just said that and they've just realized after they've got the title that they're a doctor?
It's very exciting, I think, to get a diagnosis. I think especially if you're a member of any minority, if you're a woman, never mind, a woman of color.
They are all women, by the way, and they're minority groups. They're part of the BAME.
Of course, because, studies are made on men. All the behavior is studied in cis men in particular, and most of them are white. So, great sample size. We love that for everyone. But I would say, so I run this kind of like side hustle program called PTSD to PhD, where I do my best to give people advice on how can you function better with neurodivergencies, right? So I take all that I've learned through years of project management, and I've always been studying and working at the same time. So I'm really, really good at managing my time. So, I would just say, first of all, girl, if your partner is going to leave you because you got a diagnosis, I know this is harsh, but you're better off. I'm so sorry. That's it, honey. Come on. It's, you're not all of a sudden a bad person. You're not going to be more difficult to deal with. Chances are that you just go to diagnosis, you're now going to start finding the tools to make your life easier for you. And you're going to be able to put, a name and a pin on those things that make life so difficult to you. I remember a few weeks ago, I was talking to a friend, and she's got autism and ADHD. And we were talking about how sometimes we have a hard time reading because it's a very, unless you're on that kind of like sweet hyper focused state, it can get really hard to read for like 2 hours when your brain is like, I'd much rather be baking. What do you mean we have to do this now? And we shared tips and tricks. So I think that if you've just had your diagnosis, first of all, if your partner is a decent partner, they are not going to leave you. And if they are not decent partner, you don't want them anyway. And second of all, you will find a community. Like you will find like-minded individuals, and you will be able to find tips and tricks. And don't get discouraged because a tip works for a week and then it's like, oh my God, it's never working again. That's 100%. That's what you're going to go through. There's going to be a cycle of things that you do and you don't do, and then you do them again. So go with the flow and find your community. I would say that's kind of like my advice for queer and neurodivergents alike. And don't worry about people not understanding. Neurotypical people or people who have not been diagnosed, like there is a huge stigma about neurodiversity, right? But that stigma has nothing to do with you. It has to do with capitalism. It has to do with Western society. It has to do with the patriarchy, with white supremacy. Honey, it's not you. So, don't take any, because it's not worth it.
Right. So in terms of what you've just said, I'm just going to expand on that and touch on religion. So if they're coming from a Muslim background, to which again, like I said, it's quite interesting that, you're pushing for the right reasons, because when you come from cultures that are quite heavy and religious beliefs that are quite heavy, it's quite difficult to educate your family, let alone educate yourself. So when you get to a point where you've educated yourself, it's now time to educate everybody else, and they take their time.
Oh yeah,
it's exhausting.
They're sweet time.
Literally.
Yeah, they do.
In terms of all of that, and I believe one of them was Christian, and the other colleague, she's Muslim. What advice do you have for them? Knowing that, with Christianity, you have to be married, you have to have kids. We don't believe in divorce. Again, with Islam, you have to have a home. It's all about love, respect. And, what advice do you have? And no divorce as well. Sorry, no divorce in Islam as well, dependent on which Muslim group you come from, whether African or Pakistan or the UAE. It's, even with Christianity, depending Africa, UK, it's just, it's an oxymoron in itself. So please don't come for me. I'm just trying to explain. But what's your take on that? Because I think it's difficult.
I think I'm a white girl, so and I'm not Muslim, so please do take this with like all the grains of salt in the ocean, and then maybe
need to discuss it.
Okay. I do come from a very Catholic background that I very obviously left behind, given the research that I'm doing. But so first of all, I think that you may need to take some time for yourself. Any kind of activism, any kind of educating people, even advocating for yourself. Life will grind you down. We live in such a violent system. You don't have to be educating people 24/7. If sometimes something is too much, take time for yourself, set a boundary. Your religion and your background don't matter. If you need to take some time for yourself, please take it, because I'd much rather you take time for yourself for 2 weeks, a month, however long, and then you come back to me, than you try and put up with me for like a long period of time and then you burn out and you're like, never talking to this girl again. No. So I think that's like the most important bit. The second one is, coming from a Catholic background, I was expected to marry. I was raised to be a good wife. Yeah. That didn't work. I can tell you. But they tried very hard. So
it didn't work.
It just, they tried, but it wasn't there. The spark, the spice wasn't there.
It was just in action.
didn't quite said, but yeah, I would say you have like two options, right? Or kind of like two paths, if you may. You can sort of like skirt away from your religion, if you find that it no longer suits you, and that will bring its own set of challenges. But I'm more interested in kind of like trying to have continue with your religion and continue with your beliefs. I'm a very spiritual person. And at the end of the day, I think both Christianity and Islam are about love, in a very non-romantic and very kind of like accepting way. And they both get absolutely twisted, and, you know, religion can be used against people in a number of ways, and it's definitely used against people in a number of ways. But at the end of the day, if that's what you feel about religion, if you feel that your religion is this place of love and acceptance and a very important part of your life, I would say try and read the materials that your religion is based on. So, you know, go back to the Quran, because I know there are quotes in the Quran about people who are different and they get accepted. So you will be able to find acceptance within your religion. It may as well be that you have to become the expert in your religion so that you can debate with people who may not have done these readings themselves. But if you have the energy and the will and the willpower to do that work today, go ahead and do it. You may do the work today, not do it tomorrow, not do it for a month, and then go back. It's fine. You know, it's kind of like, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So you will need to take rests, you will need to take time. But I don't think that, you know, being a Muslim or being Catholic or being Protestant has anything to do with whether you are accepted as a neurodivergent person or even a queer person. I think we are all deserving of acceptance within our circles and deserving of acceptance within our little pockets of family and friends. So I do hope that, you know, whoever asked this question can find that acceptance. And I'm sure you will find like-minded people, you will find a community. So yeah, you will get there. It will feel overwhelming for a while, and it will feel like, you know, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I'm Muslim and I just got diagnosed with ADHD. How am I going to be a good wife? Too much. You will absolutely find a way. It may be different from what people have told you should do, but you will. And that's my, you know, 2 very wide cents on the question.
No, I think, you know, with your response, which will lead me to my next question, there's no brown or white in it, in the sense of, my next question is, from a scientific, you know, perspective, we all pride ourselves that we're scientists, we do research, right? When you take the Bible, for example, if you read it with the glasses, the religious glasses, you miss certain points. But when you become scientific with the Bible and you understand, like you said, there are key scriptures there that you will find and be like, that makes so much sense. And, you know, when you become scientific and you critically evaluate what it is that you're reading and understand the writer, the author, when it was written, it makes so much sense. So in your perspective then, I know some people may come for me, sorry, I may not respond either. In your opinion, when it comes to religion and the text, you know, we can even look at the monks as well, you know, Buddhism, etc. You know, these are, we'll call them ancient texts, right? But when you look at them with the scientific eye, in your own opinion, when it comes to neurodiversity and you're reading through, there's so many lessons learned. Would you say it's better when you look at those texts as a scientist rather than being emotionally attached and reading them, because you won't see what you need to see? That's my opinion.
That's a very interesting question. So I have like 2 kinds of answers here. One is I'm a huge history buff. I'm not a historian, I'm a history buff. Okay, so don't come for me because I'm not certified. I just enjoy it. So first of all, like I always tell people, you know, keep in mind that there's like so many editions of the Bible. The Bible is a mishmash of stories that were told, and then they were put in text, and then they went through however many councils, and then they were translated, and then, like, you know, the King Henry Bible is not the same Bible that we have in Spain. So there's a variety of things happening there. Second of all, these texts have been translated a lot. And there is a lot that can get lost in translation.
And the kings were males that were asking, can you translate this? Because I want a fifth wife.
You know, like this is not really what I want this to say. So if you could just, zhuzh it up a little bit, that would be great. So there's always been a political intent when these texts have been produced, and I think that you can't like divorce their meaning from that. Yeah. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind. So one of my kind of like favorite examples of this, and I got this from Queer Eye. I will be completely honest. It's not like I'm reading the Bible on my free. That's not. But there was this pastor, and he said, I think this is in Corinthians. Jesus is kind of like curing people, right? And there's this Roman soldier, and he tells him that his slave is sick, and could you please do something?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but turns out that could be slave or it could be lover. The word that they are using. So in the original Greek text. So, just think about, let that sit for a minute, that, there is a fat chance that Jesus was out there curing queens left and right. Like,
yeah. You know what? I'm just thinking out loud as we normally do. I'm now thinking, actually, I studied the Bible for my A-levels, and we had to look at the root word in terms of its Latin, French, Greek, borrowed, or the Hebrew meaning, actual meaning, and try and put it in context. And we actually looked at the King James Bible, hence why I'm saying, about the scientific eye, because when you read it as it's quite different from when you're scientific and tracing it back to the 18th century.
And you're trying to understand what's behind that. What's the reason? Why was this put here in this way?
So, I'm seeing your point there. So in terms of, next steps then, we've talked about the scientific eye, and I've had my diagnosis. And I know that you're available online. You've got, these groups to empower and to encourage. However, in terms of the world of work, measures aren't necessarily put in place to accommodate me. What can I do to educate my employer, be it in academia or, in industry? What can I do? What advice do you have?
Well, I think that you need to be quite privileged in order to be able to educate your employer. Like, that is the first thing, right? I absolutely understand if someone is in a position in which they feel they cannot afford to not appear neurotypical, because that's where they add. So first of all, if that's you, no shame and no shade. We'll get you out of there, but just hang on. And if you're in a position in which you can educate your employer, you feel like you have enough money in the bank, you feel like you have enough of a reputation and you don't have anything to fear in that regard, I would say this is very much me with my marketing hat on. I will just bear that in mind. Sell your newfound abilities as a superpower that they are.
Oh.
So, just flip the conversation, make this, because at the end of the day, here you are in a capitalistic system trying to thrive. Okay. And this sucks. We don't like it, but you have to make, you have to make money in order to survive. So I would say, for example, when I talk with I freelance most of the time, and I highly recommend freelancing if you can do it for neurodivergent people, because it's flexible, and I found that's just exactly what I need. But when I'm talking with my clients, it's always like, this is a time frame that I'm going to need to do it. I usually ask for like 30% more time than what I think I will need. And I usually surprise them, because I will go into hyperfocus and get the thing done. But if I haven't, I'm buying myself that extra like 30% of time. And if you're in kind of like an environment in which you have to go to an office and you need for certain accommodations. So for example, let's say that you have ADHD and you would highly benefit from like a standing desk, which is what I have. Because it allows me to like fiddle and, move around, whatever. So just let your boss know that if you had a standing desk, then you'd be at least 20% more likely to be able to focus properly on your job, and set some KPIs, say, okay, if you can get me a standing desk, let's review this in 6 months and I will have reached this, and that target, right? If you're working from home and you would like a more flexible time schedule, you can do the same thing. You can be like, I found out that I am more effective during these times. I would like us to trial this for 2 to 3 weeks. These are the results that I think that I'm going to get. Let's review in a couple of weeks. So what you're doing in this way, it's giving them a way to measure your success. You're advocating for yourself, but you're also kind of like offering to be better at your job, which is what they want. They want you to have better results. They want you to be more productive, blah, blah, blah. So in that way, you're kind of like, it's like the foot on the door kind of like technique.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you so much for going through the different scenarios and the measures that you've put in place. I guess, hearing and understanding what it is that you're saying is that one needs to brand themselves, market themselves, and also share key information in terms of productivity, be it 2 hours a day. On a bad day, on a good day, I can do 6. On a bad day, I can do 2. However, I can work during the night, and usually I catch up because that works for me. I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No worries. I mean, I think it's just about being honest with yourself and then finding a way to convey this information that fits within the goals of your employer, right? So this is all about communication. They don't want to hear, this is very harsh, okay? And please, again, I'm coming to this as kind of like a very strategic sort of like mindset. So they don't want to hear about your problems. They want to know how you can be more productive for the same amount of money, because capitalism, baby. So make sure that you're not coming to them with a problem, you're coming to them with a solution. And in particular, you're coming to them with a solution to a problem that they want solved. So this is not about, oh, you know what, having noise canceling headphones on in the office would help me immensely to concentrate. This is about, I could write my reports 50% more efficiently if I wasn't distracted by the noise, so I'm going to be wearing these headphones.
No, I love that. So I've worked in HR for half of my life, literally. Well, not half of my life, I'm exaggerating, but for a number of years. And, when we sit down with somebody to ensure that they have reasonable adjustments to do their jobs better, literally what you've gone through is what we sit down and discuss. But what happens is, I'm just going to be an advocate for the devil right now, is then the employee turns around and makes it seem as if it's an inheritance for them to get these measurements. I know it's a legal law. However, they then abuse the system, and it gets to a point whereby we're like, do you know what, this is not working, there's no relationship, you're not trying, we're not trying. And then they take us to tribunal to claim and say, I have a disability. So from an employer's perspective, when it comes to neurodiversity, it's like a no man's land. They don't really want to go into it because they lose a lot of money due to claims, disability claims. And hearing what I've said, what advice would you give to somebody that feels as if it's an inheritance, and they're in academia and they're being challenged on their performance and they're thinking KPIs, etc., and they feel like, well, you should put this in place for me? What's your take on that?
I mean, as an anarchist and like an anti-capitalist, I have so much to say, but in particular to this situation, and again, with kind of like my strategic hat on, I think that these things tend to be a case of miscommunication or misaligned priorities. So I think that's what's important at that stage is, why does this person feel the way, like, are they getting paid enough to care? This is always my legitimately like first question, because when you're getting enough money to do a job and you feel taken care of, like, unless you're a narcissistic psychopath, chances are you're going to be a good and happy employee, because people don't want to seek trouble for nothing, right? So I would say, sit down with this person and have a genuine conversation about, are you not feeling valued? Are you not feeling properly compensated? Are you not happy at this job? Like, what's the deal? Are you doing things that you don't want to do? Like, I would like to understand, why do you have this attitude, right? Because I think at that stage is more a problem of attitude than anything else. And I presume that if it's a problem of attitude, it's because this person may have certain expectations that are not being met. And this may or may not be the employer's fault. Like this person may not have made their expectations clear. So for example, let's say that this person wants to be doing something else, right? But they are staying at this job and they've lost their passion. And like, if they are not voicing that is a failure in communication on both parts. So I would say, I think, first of all, try and find a reason why you're doing this job. And again, immensely privileged conversation we're having, okay? Because so many people cannot afford a privilege to be like, oh yeah, do I like this job? I wonder how I'm gonna pay rent this month, and all this kinds of stuff, right? But let's, for a minute, let's think that you're an academic in like a really good position and you're having a fit about the adaptations that have been put in place for you. So tell your employer why you're not feeling valued.
Yeah.
First of all, think why you're not feeling valued. Think why you're having this attitude. What's going on? Is there something at home? Is there something at your work? And be honest with your employer. You've given me these adaptations, but actually, this is not working for me for X, Y, Z reason. And that is it. Like, I know this is very scary. Please go and get a union. Always my top 10 advice for everyone, just unionize. But if you're honest with your employer and your employer is honest with you, you probably have a much better chance at sorting this out. Sometimes I also think that people will ask for an accommodation because they think it's going to work, and then it's not working and everyone's panicking because, oh my God, this was supposed to be successful. Have another conversation and be like, you know what? I got this recommended. I thought it was going to work. Turns out it's not working. Can we switch to something else? And I think that's a very legitimate conversation to have. I hope that works. I'm sorry. I'm the most kind of like pro-union person in the world.
No. I mean, I would advise anybody, and I've, like I said, I've worked in HR. I would advise anybody to say, get a union. Don't just walk into a conversation. I guess, again, from experience in terms of my field and my line of work, what usually happens is, as well, someone would then drop the information in terms of their actual diagnosis. And it causes us issues because we're trying to understand, we're trying to be reasonable. But as you know, each business needs to make a profit at the end of the year.
Of course.
And if I'm paying you 50K to do something and I'm getting 30K, as a return, it's not working because I need 100K to give you a bonus.
In order to be able to pay.
Yeah. So, some people, for example, they then drop, in terms of ADHD and inform us, we put the measures in place, or they need a nap during the day, put the measures in place. And the next thing, we're like, okay, there's grammatical errors in terms of these reports, what's going on? And they go, oh, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. I write to the left. It's like, right. During the interview, you didn't highlight this. We've had meetings to review your performance, you've never highlighted this. Now we're at a point where we're like, this is not working, you need to go, and then you drop, you've got dyslexia. Right, what do we do? What advice do you have for somebody that's like that? Because I think most of it is behavior and conduct, and I do respect and appreciate, diagnostics, but sometimes the behaviors and the conduct can be rather challenging.
I mean, I think that people can be challenging as like a norm. I think that also a lot of neurodivergent people kind of like, we miss social cues. And on top of that, sometimes you're not getting the diagnosis until later, especially particularly with the privatization of the NHS and of so many kind of like healthcare systems. It's so hard to get a diagnosis anyway. So may as well be that legitimately this person just got a diagnosis. Like that is a reality that happens to us all the time. I would like to think that if the environment is supportive enough, you will be given all the information up front. And I think that if you can afford, again, if you're in a situation where you can afford to give out all the information to your employer, please do it. Advocate for yourself, be as honest as you can. If you don't feel safe to do this, then obviously don't, we have to make rent. But also think about your performance and think about how you can improve it. So, I mean, install Grammarly. Like, if you know this is your problem, if you are aware that these are kind of like your pitfalls, right? Get the tools in place. You can get those tools. You don't need permission from your employer to run a grammar check or like on a document. We all have to adapt in different ways. Neurotypicals have to adapt in different ways as well. So learn how you can adapt better to your environment. If you want to keep this job, if you like this job, if this is something that you're doing and it's paying you rent and you're happy with it, there are so many things that you can do to improve and to meet those goals. And again, just keep the communication open if you can afford to. I would say that's always my main advice. I feel like a relationship counselor.
I'm loving it. So thank you. And to add on mental health as well, when you've just been diagnosed or if you've been and you're not coming to terms with your diagnosis, do you think that encourages somebody to not share relevant key information with their employer or their spouse? Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, for a while, I would not tell people that I had PTSD because, when you tell people you have PTSD, I mean, I'm a woman of a certain age. It's clear that I got it in Vietnam, right? There's a lot of questions about, the first question is always, how did you get PTSD? And it's like, yes, let me relive this very, traumatic sequence of events for you. I would love to do that. We love doing this. Yes. Thank you. But also there is this, so you can't hear loud noises, or, people make a series of assumptions based on a diagnosis. And the first person that's going to make those assumptions is you when you get that diagnosis. So when I was diagnosed with PTSD, I was like, oh, wait, so no flashing lights, right? I can never go to a rave again. What was me? All these kinds of stuff. So I think we have so much internalized kind of like, phobias and prejudice. It can be very hard to overcome that. And in particular with ADHD, a lot of women that get diagnosed with ADHD, they're like, oh, so am I going to become like this really annoying person now that like can't stop speaking? And it's like, this is just a label to define like a set of conditions. They haven't transplanted your brain. Just because they gave you a diagnosis, you're not a different person. So I think that it's very important to remember that, and just be kind to yourself. Be honest with yourself first and foremost. And a diagnosis is not a death sentence. It's a tool for you to better understand yourself.
Love it. So now let's flip that. We've left the employer, supervisor.
Yes.
How does one manage that relationship? I mean,
my God, I love that.
It's like,
this is my powerhouse.
It's like, how can I be Superwoman or Superman and, disclose this information and still get my title and be a doctor or do my postdoc? How can I do that?
Okay, so this is gonna sound weird, okay? But your lack of social skills and your inability to read social cues is really, really going to be an advantage for you here. So I actually have like a 3-blog series on one of my blogs on how to do a Gantt diagram for a project, which is for like your PhD. And I love Gantt. Oh my God, I'm a sucker for an Excel sheet. I just,
Please share with me after our call.
It's just, project management tools. They get me all hot and bothered. But so communication is key, right? The framework that I like to use for my PhD and what I recommend other people use for their PhD as well, especially if they are neurodivergent, is kind of like the agile framework, which comes from like the tech industry. The idea with the agile is that you have weekly sprints in which you assign tasks and then you review on next week, what's up, has this happened? So usually most UK universities, you have a meeting once a month with your supervisor, which may be too few for a neurodivergent person. Like, I don't know if this happens to other people with ADHD, but if a task takes more than 10 minutes, I am no longer interested in performing this task. And I'm sorry, I'm out of here. So the idea of having meetings once per month, it's like, what do you mean? Leaving me alone? No. So what I do is I set up meetings with agile meetings with other colleagues, other researchers who are working on their PhD, and we do weekly kind of like sprints. Yeah. Oh, have you done that? Oh, have you done this? Oh, what did that, turn out to be? Blah, blah, blah. And we stay accountable. So you have like an accountability system. It's very important that your accountability system is kind to you. Please don't go having accountability systems with people that are not kind. Do not recommend. We do not need more trauma. No. And in particular with your supervisor, what I do is agendas for every meeting. Because I have a squirrel brain and I will forget. I will forget what day it is, what my name is, what am I doing here? So if I don't have an agenda, there's nothing happening. And an agenda will help you, stay focused, discuss the thing that you need to discuss. That's just it. And also at the end of every meeting, I do a list of actions. So a list of deliverables. Yeah. We've had a 1 hour, 2 hour discussion about my PhD, and I've told you this, and you've sent me that back, and blah, blah, blah. What are the actions for you, and what are the actions for your supervisor? And that will give you a much more equitable relationship with your supervisor, because this is no longer about you tell me to do stuff, I do stuff. This is about we are project managing something together, and we come to an agreement. So that, for my very anarchist and kind of like problems with authority brain, that's the way, because if she's being told what to do.
Okay, I love that. So anybody that's just heard that and they think that is amazing, literally get in contact, get some help, and put the actions in place and work on an action plan. Agile working is a thing.
Graduated, elevated, now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go.